The story begins in the vast expanse of space, where the Galactic Empire ruled with confidence and arrogance. For centuries, the Empire had expanded its reach across countless star systems, conquering worlds and bending them to its will. Its fleets were enormous, and its weapons were feared throughout the galaxy. Every commander and soldier in the Empire believed that no civilization could stand against their power. They thought of themselves as unstoppable, and this overconfidence was about to lead them into a trap they could never imagine. Far away, in the Terran sector, life was peaceful. The people of Terra had developed steadily, building cities, space stations, and small fleets to protect their home system. They were aware of the galaxy's dangers but had lived without serious threats for decades. Their scientists and strategists had long observed distant powers like the Empire, learning quietly but without causing attention. For Terrans, the galaxy was a place of possibility, exploration, an opportunity, but it was also a place they knew could turn dangerous very quickly. The Empire, meanwhile, had sent a massive fleet toward Terran space. From the beginning, this mission was meant to be a show of strength, a simple patrol to test how the Terrans would respond. But the Empire commanders were not interested in diplomacy or careful observation. They wanted domination. They believed that a display of power would make the Terrans submit without a fight. The fleet that approached Terran space was impressive. Thousands of ships. From massive dreadnoughts bristling with weapons to agile fighters ready to strike at a moment's notice, each ship was built with the best technology the Empire could offer, and each captain believed they were about to witness an easy victory as the Empire ships crossed into Terran space. Their scanners picked up signals from Terran systems. They detected settlements, spaceports, and small defense stations. To the Empire, these readings confirmed their beliefs. Terrans were disorganized, weak, and unprepared. The commanders laughed among themselves, making arrogant predictions about how quickly they could crush any resistance. Some officers bet on how long it would take for the Terrans to surrender, while others suggested minor shows of force. It's like destroying a few outposts to make an example. No one imagined that the Terrans could pose a real challenge. Back on Terra, alarms began to sound. Terran space monitors had detected the incoming Empire fleet early, thanks to a network of advanced satellites and sensor arrays. For the first time, the people of Terra felt a real sense of danger. In the command centers, military officers scrambled to analyze the fleet. Scientists worked alongside tacticians, examining the Empire ship's formations, weapon ranges, and movement patterns. They quickly realized that this was not a minor patrol, it was a serious incursion. If the Terrans reacted too slowly, the Empire could easily dominate their home system. But despite the danger, the Terrans did not panic. They understood that intelligence, preparation, and clever strategy could turn the situation in their favor. Even against a much stronger opponent, the Empire fleet moved confidently, expecting to encounter little resistance. Their ships glided silently through space, weapons primed, crews eager for action. On board the flagship, the commanding officer addressed his captains, his tone both condescending and triumphant. He spoke of the Terrans as primitive and insignificant, emphasizing that their mission would be over quickly. The captains nodded, sharing his confidence. They had fought countless battles across the galaxy and seen countless civilizations fall. To them, the Terrans were just another line on a map, another target to conquer. The arrogance was palpable. The Empire truly believed that victory was guaranteed. Meanwhile, on Terra, the people were becoming aware of the scale of the threat. News spread through the cities and space stations that a massive fleet had entered Terran space. While there was fear, there was also determination. Terran leaders convened emergency meetings, bringing together the brightest minds in strategy, science, and defense. Unlike the Empire, the Terrans knew that sheer firepower could not guarantee success. They had to understand their enemy, predict their movements, and use every advantage the home system could provide. Their plan would not be about overwhelming force, it would be about intelligence, surprise, and clever use of their environment. As the Empire fleet advanced, scouts were sent ahead to gather information. These scouts moved through Terran space, attempting to locate key installations, communication hubs, and any potential resistance. But the Terrans had anticipated this. Sensor arrays were positioned in hidden locations, transmitting false signals and masking true defenses. The Empire scouts reported minimal resistance, and the commanders celebrated what they thought was the first sign of Terran weakness. They did not know that every move they made was being observed, recorded, and analyzed by the Terrans. The tables were being quietly set for a confrontation that the Empire was not prepared to handle. The civilians of Terra were mostly unaware of the full scope of the incoming threat. Families went about their daily lives. Children played in parks and spaceports, and workers continued their duties. From their perspective, life seemed ordinary, almost peaceful. Yet, hidden beneath the surface, Terran scientists and military officers worked tirelessly to prepare. They set up defense grids, tested emergency response protocols, and began crafting strategies that relied on intelligence rather than brute force. The contrast between the Empire's arrogance and Terran preparedness highlighted the key theme. Confidence without understanding can be dangerous, and strength alone does not guarantee victory. Inside the Empire's fleet, complacency began to show. Officers joked about how quickly the Terrans would surrender. Soldiers trained for battle with little thought of real danger, believing that their weapons and numbers made them invincible. This overconfidence blinded them to subtle warnings, such as anomalies in sensor readings or unexpected patterns in Terran communications. Meanwhile, Terran observers, watching from hidden stations, noted every detail of the Empire's approach. They recorded formations, timing, and even the Empire's communication methods. Every piece of information was stored for later use, ready to give the Terrans an advantage when the moment to act arrived. As the fleet approached key Terran systems, the first signs of caution appeared. Some Empire officers suggested minor reconnaissance before entering the heart of Terran space, but their suggestions were ignored. The commanders believed that hesitation was weakness, and they pressed forward with confidence. This decision would later prove to be one of their greatest mistakes. The Terrans, patient and observant, knew that every Empire move was predictable if watched carefully. They began to prepare specific countermeasures, positioning forces in ways that would maximize impact while minimizing risk to themselves at the same time. The Terran scientists began analyzing the Empire's technology. They studied weapon ranges, shield capacities, and communication protocols. Even though the Empire believed its power was unchallengeable, the Terrans discovered patterns and weaknesses that could be exploited. Small teams were sent on reconnaissance missions to gather additional intelligence, often operating behind enemy lines or within Empire-controlled regions. These teams moved carefully, avoiding detection while providing critical information that would shape Terran strategy for the battles ahead. Every observation, every small piece of data, became part of a larger plan designed to turn the Empire's strength against itself. The Empire's fleet continued its march. Still unaware of the careful watch the Terrans had set, they believed the challenge would be easy, and they had no reason to suspect that a civilization they considered primitive could organize a sophisticated defense. Yet, in the shadows of Terran space, preparations continued. Emergency defenses were put into place around key installations. Ambush points were mapped out and communication networks were fortified. Every aspect of Terran space was studied, ensuring that when the Empire finally struck, it would encounter resistance far beyond what it expected. The Terrans understood that their survival depended on cleverness, adaptability, and unity. Rather than raw power, the first phase of the story ends with the Empire crossing deeper into Terran space, still confident and unaware. The Terrans, on the other hand, were readying themselves for a confrontation that would test their courage, intelligence, and determination. The stage was set for the coming battles. With the Empire blinded by arrogance and the Terrans quietly preparing to turn the tables, the contrast between the two forces highlighted the story's central theme. Underestimating an opponent can lead to disaster, and careful planning and intelligence can give the seemingly weaker side an unexpected advantage. Asterisk, every sensor. Every hidden squad and every careful calculation by the Terrans was part of a larger strategy to defend their home system. The Empire thought they were entering an easy conquest, but the Terrans were preparing a response that would surprise them completely. This moment, the crossing of the border and the first recognition of Terran presence, marked the beginning of a story of courage, strategy, and the ultimate clash between arrogance and wisdom. As the Empire's massive fleet moved deeper into Terran space, the people of Terra realized that the threat was far more serious than they had ever imagined. The earlier alarms had already shaken the Terran Council. And now, it was clear that their home system was facing an enemy that believed it could dominate effortlessly. Despite the fear that spread across some parts of Terran society, the leaders, scientists, and military strategists remained calm. They understood that panic would only weaken them. Instead, they focused on preparation, strategy, and intelligence. They knew that brute force alone could not match the Empire's superior firepower, so they had to rely on cunning, planning, and creativity to defend their home. The Terran Council gathered in a secure underground command center, deep beneath one of the largest cities on the home planet. The council included military generals, political leaders, and top scientists from various fields. The room was filled with tension, but also a quiet sense of determination. Holographic displays of the Empire fleet hovered above the central table, showing the positions, movements, and formations of enemy ships. Each piece of data was carefully analyzed. The scientists explained the capabilities of the Empire's weapons and shields, while the military officers discussed potential strategies. Every scenario was considered, from direct confrontation to ambushes and defensive maneuvers. The Terrans understood that their survival depended on thinking ahead, anticipating every move the Empire might make. While the Council planned, Terran spies and scouts were already at work. Small strike teams were sent into areas near the Empire fleet, sometimes skimming the edges of enemy-controlled space to gather intelligence. These teams had to operate in secrecy, using advanced cloaking devices and stealth technology to avoid detection. They observed the Empire ships, noting weak points in the fleet's formations and patterns in the enemy's behavior. Every detail they could gather would later be used to craft attacks that were precise and devastating. Despite the Terrans' smaller numbers, the strike teams were composed of the bravest and most skilled Terrans, individuals who knew that a single mistake could cost their lives, but who were willing to risk everything to protect their home. The Empire, confident in its superiority, continued to underestimate the Terrans. Their commanders assumed that any resistance would be weak and poorly coordinated. They believed that fear alone would keep the Terrans from mounting a serious defense. Messages were sent across the fleet, encouraging captains to expect minimal engagement. Soldiers trained for battle, but they had not yet faced an enemy that truly challenged their skills. This overconfidence was precisely what the Terrans intended to exploit. By allowing the Empire to advance, the Terrans could observe, analyze, and predict their enemy's actions, preparing countermeasures that would turn every weakness into an advantage. Back on Terra, the Council finalized a bold plan. They would not try to match the Empire ship for ship, but instead use careful intelligence and strategic positioning to strike where the enemy was vulnerable. Certain planets and outposts were fortified with hidden defense systems, including energy shields, missile batteries, and automated turrets. These installations were disguised to look harmless from space, making the Empire believe they were ordinary colonies or supply stations. In reality, each location was a trap, designed to lure enemy ships into zones where they could be attacked from multiple angles. Every member of the Council knew that the first clash with the Empire would not just test their weapons, but also their ingenuity and ability to think under pressure. Terran scientists also worked on improving technology that could level the playing field. They studied the Empire's weapon designs, identifying patterns and vulnerabilities. Using this information, they developed specialized countermeasures, such as systems that could disrupt enemy shields or interfere with targeting systems. They also improved their communication networks to coordinate attacks across vast distances, allowing small Terran units to work together seamlessly. The combination of intelligence, preparation, and technological innovation gave the Terrans confidence. Even in the face of an enemy they could not hope to overpower directly. Meanwhile, the civilian population began to feel the tension in the air. Ships in orbit were on high alert. Factories began producing supplies for the fleet. Emergency protocols were activated across cities and space stations. While most civilians did not participate directly in the military strategy, they played a vital role in supporting the effort. Communications, logistics, and resource management became crucial as the Terrans prepared for the coming confrontation. People began to realize that defending their home would require the cooperation and courage of every individual. From scientists to pilots to ordinary citizens maintaining critical infrastructure. It was a total mobilization of the society. Though most of the world remained calm outwardly, trusting in the leadership of their council. One of the most daring elements of the Terran plan involved sending a small, elite strike team directly toward the Empire fleet. Their mission was dangerous, nearly suicidal, but absolutely critical. The team's goal was to infiltrate the Empire's formation, gather first-hand intelligence, and, if possible, sabotage critical systems. This team represented the best of Terran courage, training, and ingenuity. Each member was aware of the risks, yet their sense of duty and patriotism drove them forward. They traveled in a stealth craft designed to evade detection, carefully timing their movements to avoid patrols. Their journey alone was filled with tension and suspense. As a single mistake could mean immediate capture or death, as the strike team approached the Empire fleet, the contrast between the two forces became clear. The Empire fleet was vast, gleaming, and intimidating, with ships of unimaginable size and firepower. Crews moved with confidence, fully expecting to face minimal resistance. Yet, every maneuver they made was being monitored by the Terrans. The strike team moved silently among them, gathering critical information about ship placements, defensive measures, and weapon ranges. Each observation was recorded and sent back to Terra, where the Council immediately began incorporating the data into their larger strategy. This small team, moving almost invisibly, became the eyes and ears of the Terran forces, turning what seemed like a hopeless situation into an opportunity to gain the upper hand. The Empire, despite its strength, was blind to the subtle intelligence war unfolding around it. Officers focused on maintaining formations and executing preset strategies. Unaware that the Terrans were already anticipating every move, this arrogance would soon prove costly. Meanwhile, the Terran Council used the incoming intelligence to prepare a detailed series of responses. They simulated battles, tested potential ambush points, and devised ways to exploit the Empire's overconfidence. Every scenario was considered, including unexpected events such as fleet reinforcements or aggressive counterattacks by the Empire. This level of preparation reflected the Terrans, understanding that victory would not come from power alone, it would come from preparation, adaptability, and foresight. As days passed, the Empire fleet advanced further into Terran space, confident yet increasingly stretched. Their supply lines lengthened, and small disruptions, carefully orchestrated by Terran scouts, began to create minor complications. These disruptions, though small, forced Empire officers to make adjustments, revealing patterns in their decision-making. Terran analysts watched closely, noting how commanders responded under pressure, how ships were deployed, and how quickly they adapted to unexpected events. This careful observation allowed the Terrans to refine their strategy continuously, preparing for the moment when they would finally engage in direct confrontation. One critical realization for the Terrans was the importance of timing. They knew that engaging the Empire too early could lead to catastrophic losses, but waiting too long might allow the enemy to strike decisive blows. The Council worked tirelessly to find the perfect balance, coordinating planetary defenses, strike teams, and intelligence operations in a synchronized plan that would unfold in precise stages. Every move the Empire made brought them closer to a situation where the Terrans could strike with maximum effect. Patience, restraint, and careful observation became the Terrans' most powerful weapons, proving that courage alone is not enough without careful planning and understanding of the opponent. They have shifted from a reactive posture to proactive preparation, turning fear into action and knowledge into power. The small strike teams, the fortified installations, and the careful intelligence work all set the stage for the Terrans' first major engagement with the Empire. The stage is set for clever strategy to meet overwhelming force, for determination and ingenuity to challenge arrogance and strength. The Terrans, united and prepared. Wait for the moment when they will show the Empire that their home cannot be violated without consequence, and that even the mightiest force in the galaxy can be challenged by intelligence, courage, and unwavering resolve. Asterisk. The first clash between the Terrans and the Empire was nothing short of astonishing. The Empire, confident in its strength and sure of a quick victory, launched an initial strike against one of the Terran outposts. The Empire commanders expected a brief encounter, maybe some minor resistance that would be easily crushed. They believed that the Terrans, being comparatively primitive, would scatter at the sight of their fleet. Thousands of soldiers and officers prepared for what they assumed would be an effortless victory. The dreadnoughts bristled with weapons. The fighters were ready to swarm any defender. And the Empire's confidence was absolute. From their perspective, the battle had already been won before it even began. Meanwhile, the Terrans had prepared carefully for this moment. Their initial defense relied on deception, surprise, and exploiting every possible weakness in the Empire fleet. The outpost that the Empire believed to be weak and insignificant was actually a carefully fortified position. Hidden turrets, energy shields, and strategically placed mines were all designed to catch the invaders off guard. Terran sensors monitored every Empire ship's approach, providing real-time data to defense commanders. Terran pilots and soldiers, though outnumbered, were highly trained and had rehearsed countless scenarios for this very confrontation. As the Empire approached the outpost, their scanners reported nothing unusual. They saw what appeared to be a small, poorly defended station and assumed it would fall in moments. But the moment the first wave of fighters came within range, the Terrans revealed their trap. Automated turrets activated simultaneously, targeting enemy ships with precision. Mines hidden along common approach routes detonated, causing chaos among the Empire's squadrons. Terran fighters, small but fast and maneuverable, darted out from hidden positions, striking with pinpoint accuracy before retreating to safety. The Empire soldiers were stunned. Their confidence, once unwavering, began to crack as the first ships were damaged or destroyed. The battle escalated quickly. The Empire, expecting minimal resistance, had not prepared for the Terrans' use of intelligence and strategy. Their formation, carefully calculated for efficiency against weaker opponents, became a disadvantage. The Terrans had studied the patterns of their enemy, predicting every movement and countering it with devastating precision. Each Terran strike forced the Empire to adjust, revealing more vulnerabilities in their fleet. The very arrogance that had guided them so far now became a liability. Ships collided in confusion, and commanders shouted orders that were delayed or misinterpreted in the chaos. The Terran pilots, small in number but coordinated through advanced communication networks, moved with extraordinary skill. They exploited every blind spot in the Empire formation, weaving in and out of danger, striking at weak points, and retreating before the enemy could respond. Each maneuver was calculated, rehearsed, and executed with perfect timing. From the Empire perspective, it was almost incomprehensible. How could a seemingly primitive civilization inflict such precise damage against their overwhelming firepower? The Terran success was not based on strength alone, but on strategy, teamwork, and the element of surprise. The outpost itself became a battlefield of technological contrasts. Empire weapons, powerful and destructive, often overshot or missed their targets due to the Terrans' clever use of terrain and advanced sensors. Energy shields on the outpost absorbed direct hits, while hidden turrets retaliated, scoring precise strikes against the intruders. Small Terran crafts darted in and out, sabotaging larger ships or taking out critical systems. The Empire soldiers, trained for open combat and straightforward assaults, were unprepared for the combination of stealth, intelligence, and precision attacks that the Terrans had perfected. As the battle continued, the Empire's initial shock transformed into frustration. Officers yelled orders, attempting to regain control, but the Terrans were always one step ahead. Every attempt to regroup was met with new resistance. Supply ships and support vessels became targets, further destabilizing the Empire formation. The Terrans had planned for these eventualities, ensuring that even smaller attacks would have a larger strategic impact. Each destroyed or disabled ship caused ripple effects across the Empire fleet. Lowering morale and increasing confusion, the Terran Council monitored the battle from the command center, analyzing every move in real time. Each success of the defense teams reinforced their confidence and allowed them to adapt further. They could see the Empire's weaknesses becoming more apparent: over-reliance on firepower, its predictable maneuvers, and slow reactions to unexpected threats. Using this knowledge, the Terrans adjusted their defense in seconds, directing reinforcements to where they were most needed and preparing ambushes for any overextended Empire ships. The combination of preparation, intelligence, and quick decision-making turned the tide in a way that the Empire had not anticipated. Civilians watching from orbital stations and safe zones were awestruck. They had feared the arrival of the Empire, yet now they witnessed their defenders execute maneuvers that seemed almost impossible. Small fighters outmaneuvering giant dreadnoughts, ambushes crippling entire squadrons, and hidden defenses foiling every expected strike. It all created a mix of fear, excitement, and pride. The Terrans realized that their unity and creativity were as important as their technology. The Empire, powerful as it was, lacked the adaptability and insight that had allowed the Terrans to thrive in their own system. The battle continued over several days. The Empire, desperate to achieve even a minor victory, became increasingly aggressive. Their commanders ordered more reckless maneuvers, hoping sheer numbers would overwhelm the defenders. But each attempt was met with a calculated counter. Terran forces used the home system's geography to their advantage, employing gravitational anomalies, asteroid fields, and hidden orbital installations to limit the effectiveness of the Empire's overwhelming firepower. Every failed attack by the Empire cost them more ships, fuel, and morale. While the Terrans gained valuable intelligence about enemy tactics, the Terran strike teams, small and mobile, played a critical role. They infiltrated enemy ships whenever possible, disabling critical systems or sabotaging supply lines. Their missions were incredibly dangerous, often requiring them to board enemy vessels while under heavy fire. Yet they succeeded repeatedly, further demoralizing the Empire fleet. Each successful mission not only caused immediate damage, but also forced the Empire commanders to allocate resources to protection, slowing their advance and exposing other vulnerabilities. The Terrans' ability to fight asymmetrically using intelligence, speed, and clever tactics proved to be far more effective than the Empire's reliance on raw firepower. By the end of this first clash, the Empire had suffered significant losses. Entire squadrons were destroyed, supply lines disrupted, and morale shattered. The commanders, once confident in an easy victory, were forced to admit that the Terrans were not the primitive and disorganized opponents they had assumed. Instead, they were cunning, resourceful, and resilient. The battle had shown that the Empire's arrogance was its greatest weakness. The Terrans had turned their smaller numbers into an advantage by using superior knowledge, preparation, and ingenuity. This first encounter set the tone for the conflict that would follow. The Empire, now aware that victory would not come easily, became more cautious, though their pride made them slow to adapt. They underestimated the Terrans' ability to anticipate and counter their every move. The Terrans, emboldened by their success, continued to refine their strategies, preparing for even larger confrontations. What had started as a seemingly minor skirmish had become a turning point, proving that intelligence, courage, and careful planning could overcome even the most overwhelming odds. In the aftermath, the Terrans repaired and strengthened their defenses, learned from every move of the Empire, and coordinated further attacks. The first clash was more than just a battle, it was a demonstration of the Terrans' resilience, their ability to adapt, and their willingness to defend their home at all costs. It also served as a harsh lesson for the Empire. Arrogance, overconfidence, and underestimating an opponent can lead to disaster, no matter how powerful one believes they are. The Empire retreating temporarily to regroup, nursing their losses and reconsidering their approach. The Terrans, on the other hand, had gained not only a tactical advantage, but also confidence in their ability to challenge the mightiest fleet in the galaxy. They had proven that the combination of strategy, intelligence, and unity could turn the tables, even against an opponent who seemed invincible. The stage was now set for the next phase. The Terrans would move from defense to offense, planning a counterstrike that could change the fate of the entire conflict, after their first successful defense. The Terrans knew they had an opportunity to turn the tide completely. They had studied the Empire's movements, observed their weaknesses, and learned how overconfidence affected their decision-making. The Empire had assumed that the Terrans would only defend, that they would react slowly and timidly to attacks, and that their superior firepower would inevitably dominate. But the Terrans had realized that defense alone would not end the threat. They had to strike back, decisively and intelligently. The plan they devised was daring, risky, and required every Terran to act with precision, courage. In unity, the Terran leadership gathered in the command center. Reviewing intelligence gathered from reconnaissance missions and the first battle, every piece of information was analyzed. They noted the Empire's predictable flight paths, the timing of their attacks, and the weaknesses in ship formations. The Terrans also studied the morale of the Empire's forces. After their first clash, many soldiers and captains were frustrated, anxious, or demoralized. The Terrans knew that an aggressive and well-timed counterattack could exploit this vulnerability, creating chaos within the enemy fleet. Plans were made to strike at the heart of the Empire's formation, targeting command ships, supply lines, and critical systems simultaneously. The Terrans' counterstrike was built on several key strategies. First, they would use intelligence and stealth to move small groups of ships into positions the Empire would not expect. These ships were fast, maneuverable, and equipped with technology that could interfere with enemy targeting and shields. Second, the Terrans had prepared traps throughout space using automated systems, energy fields, and mines. These traps were hidden in areas the Empire fleet considered safe or unimportant, ensuring maximum damage when triggered. Third, the Terrans coordinated attacks across multiple locations, creating confusion and forcing the Empire to divide its attention and resources. The plan required perfect timing, as even the smallest misstep could lead to disaster. As the Terran strike teams began their maneuver, the Empire was largely unaware of what was coming. Their fleet was still focused on expected battle routines, overconfident that the Terrans would continue to respond predictably. Empire captains and soldiers believed they had learned from their initial setback, yet they underestimated the Terrans' ability to adapt and innovate. The Empire's main command ships were moving into position, expecting to engage in minor skirmishes rather than face a coordinated counterattack across multiple sectors. This underestimation would soon prove catastrophic. The first wave of Terran ships struck swiftly and silently. Using the element of surprise, they disabled enemy sensors and communications on several ships, cutting them off from the rest of the fleet. Small fighters darted in to sabotage engines, jam weapon systems, and create confusion among the Empire soldiers. The Empire's response was slow and disorganized. Officers were forced to issue frantic orders, but the Terrans had already disrupted the usual chain of command. Each disabled or confused ship left gaps in the formation, exposing larger vessels to attacks from multiple directions. The Terrans also activated their hidden defenses. Automated turrets, shielded stations, and energy traps came online simultaneously, striking Empire ships as they passed through what had seemed safe zones. Mines detonated in clusters, tearing through the hulls of enemy vessels. Terran forces moved with coordination that seemed almost impossible given the size of the battlefield. Every strike, every ambush, and every maneuver was calculated to maximize damage while minimizing Terran losses. The Empire, unprepared for such a multi-layered attack, suffered immense damage within hours. One of the most remarkable aspects of the counterstrike was the way Terran technology and ingenuity compensated for their smaller numbers. The Empire's ships were larger and more powerful, but the Terrans used speed, surprise, and precision to turn these advantages against them. Small strike teams targeted command ships, knowing that disabling or destroying them would disrupt the coordination of entire squadrons. Shields were bypassed using experimental technology, and weapon systems were jammed at critical moments. Each success created panic within the Empire fleet, and their attempts to regroup only made them more vulnerable. Terran pilots and crews displayed extraordinary bravery and skill during the counterattack. They risked everything to carry out missions deep inside enemy formations, sometimes boarding enemy vessels to sabotage critical systems or rescue captured Terran personnel. The precision of these attacks stunned the Empire's soldiers, who could not comprehend how a supposedly weaker civilization could inflict such damage. Every action by the Terrans was reinforced by real-time intelligence from command centers and reconnaissance teams, allowing them to adapt instantaneously to changing situations on the battlefield. The chaos within the Empire fleet grew as the Terrans continued their assault. Communication lines between ships were disrupted. Supply ships were destroyed, and key strategic points fell under Terran control. The Empire attempted to respond with force, but their numerical advantage became less meaningful in the face of targeted strikes, ambushes, and technological disruption. Every maneuver by the Empire was anticipated and countered by the Terrans. Their coordinated attack forced the enemy to make desperate decisions, spreading them even thinner and exposing further weaknesses across multiple sectors. The Terran counterstrike achieved its objectives. Strategic points were secured, enemy formations were fractured, and morale among the Empire's soldiers plummeted. The Terrans demonstrated that intelligence, strategy, and courage could compensate for differences in raw power. The battle was not only physical but psychological. The Empire's overconfidence, arrogance, and assumption of superiority were being systematically dismantled. For the first time, the enemy realized that victory would not be simple, and that the Terrans were not a civilization to be underestimated. Civilians and non-combat personnel also played an important role in the counterattack. Communication networks, logistical support, and real-time monitoring ensured that every Terran unit knew its task and timing. This level of coordination allowed the Terrans to act in unison, striking at multiple points simultaneously. Supplies and reinforcements were routed efficiently to critical positions, and repairs to damaged ships and stations were handled swiftly. Maintaining the momentum of the offensive, the Terrans had created a system where every individual's effort contributed directly to the overall success of the operation. As the battle raged, the Empire suffered massive losses. Entire squadrons were destroyed or incapacitated. Dreadnoughts were damaged beyond repair, and command ships were forced to retreat. The once mighty fleet, which had entered Terran space with confidence and arrogance, now faced disarray and panic. Officers attempted to regroup, but communication failures, destruction of key ships, and Terran precision strikes made coordinated action almost impossible. The counterstrike had turned the tide decisively in favor of the Terrans. The Terrans had accomplished more than just military victory. They had sent a powerful message. The Empire had assumed that Terran space was an easy target, that its technological and numerical superiority guaranteed dominance. But the counterstrike had proven the opposite. Terrans had used intelligence, strategy, and careful planning to overcome overwhelming odds. They had transformed a defensive situation into a proactive offensive, gaining both tactical advantage and confidence for the next stage of the conflict. The impact of the counterstrike extended beyond immediate military gains. The Terrans had shown that courage, ingenuity, and unity could challenge even the most formidable opponents. The Empire, now weakened and demoralized, would think twice before underestimating Terran resilience. Meanwhile, the Terran population gained a profound sense of pride and empowerment, understanding that their combined efforts, strategy, and determination could protect their civilization and even turn the tables on a seemingly invincible enemy. The phase concluded with the Empire retreating in confusion, nursing their losses and attempting to regroup. They had suffered not only material damage but also a significant blow to their pride and authority. The Terrans, on the other hand, had learned valuable lessons from the engagement, preparing for future battles with increased confidence, experience, and strategic insight. The counterstrike had set the stage for the final phase, where Terrans would consolidate their victories and ensure that the Empire would pay the ultimate price for daring to violate Terran space? Asterisk. The final phase of the conflict began with the Empire fleet in disarray. After the Terrans' decisive counterstrike, the Empire's commanders were desperate to regroup, but confusion, fear, and shattered morale ran through their ranks. Dreadnoughts that had once struck terror across the galaxy now drifted damaged and isolated, while smaller ships had lost cohesion entirely. Communication lines were severed, and critical systems were destroyed or sabotaged. The Empire, which had entered Terran space with overconfidence and arrogance, now faced a civilization that had proven far more capable, intelligent, and unified than they had ever imagined. Every move the Empire made seemed slow and ineffective compared to the Terrans' coordinated response. And their losses continued to mount. The Terrans were not content with merely repelling the invaders. They intended to finish what they had started. Their leaders recognized that if they allowed the Empire to retreat and regroup, the galaxy would remain under constant threat. With precise intelligence gathered from previous battles, the Terrans planned a series of calculated attacks targeting the Empire's command structures and supply chains. These attacks were designed to disrupt the enemy's ability to regroup, preventing any chance of counteroffensive. Unlike the Empire's reckless reliance on overwhelming force, the Terrans used strategy, timing, and surprise to maximize their impact. Every action, every deployment of forces, was carefully coordinated to create the maximum effect with minimum risk. The first major strike targeted the Empire's flagship, the symbol of authority and power for the invading fleet. The Terrans used stealth technology and advanced maneuvering to approach undetected. Small, highly trained teams infiltrated enemy lines, disabling defensive shields and sabotaging critical weapon systems. The flagship's crew, unprepared for such a precise attack, struggled to respond. Confusion spread like wildfire across the fleet. As the flagship had coordinated attacks, defense signals, and communication for the rest of the squadrons, with the command ship compromised, Empire forces were thrown into chaos. Pilots and captains acted independently, often making poor decisions that further weakened their position. At the same time, Terran forces struck the Empire's supply lines. The enemy fleet relied on a constant flow of fuel, ammunition, and supplies, and without these, their operational efficiency deteriorated rapidly. The Terrans intercepted convoys, disabled storage stations, and even used precision attacks to destroy entire supply ships. The Empire, now unable to sustain prolonged operations, found itself fighting not just against superior tactics, but also against a lack of resources. This combination of strategic attacks on command, supply, and formation created a domino effect that left the Empire vulnerable in every sector. Terran pilots, engineers, and soldiers displayed extraordinary coordination and bravery during these operations. Small teams carried out daring missions deep inside enemy formations, sometimes boarding ships to sabotage critical systems or capture intelligence. Other teams used long-range attacks to disable multiple ships simultaneously. The Terrans demonstrated that adaptability, intelligence, and courage could overcome brute force. Each mission was carefully synchronized. Every team was aware that their success or failure could impact the broader battle. Yet, despite the risks, they executed with precision, taking advantage of every opening created by the Empire's confusion and overconfidence. The psychological impact on the Empire fleet was immense. Soldiers and officers who had once believed in the invincibility of their forces now witnessed defeat, confusion, and betrayal of expectations. Entire squadrons were destroyed, command lines severed, and communication systems rendered useless. The morale of the fleet plummeted, and panic began to spread. Commanders who had once issued orders with confidence now hesitated, unsure of how to respond to the Terrans' unpredictability. This lack of coordination allowed the Terrans to continue striking efficiently and effectively, maintaining momentum and denying the Empire any chance to regroup. In addition to direct attacks, the Terrans employed environmental advantages to their benefit. They lured enemy ships into hazardous regions of space, using gravitational anomalies asteroid belts, and unstable planetary orbits as natural weapons. Mines and automated defenses were strategically placed to maximize damage while reducing Terran exposure. The Empire, unfamiliar with the local terrain and unaware of these hidden dangers, suffered repeated losses. These carefully planned traps showcased the Terrans' ingenuity, turning knowledge of their own system into a powerful weapon against a technologically superior opponent. As the battle progressed, the Terrans continued to apply pressure on multiple fronts. Their forces were not centralized, but dispersed in a coordinated manner, striking at weak points while maintaining strong defenses elsewhere. Smaller squads disrupted enemy communications and navigation, while larger groups targeted heavily armed vessels and supply hubs. The Empire attempted to counter, but their slower, cumbersome ships were easy targets for Terran agility and precision. The Terrans' ability to coordinate attacks across multiple sectors overwhelmed the Empire, forcing them into reactive and desperate maneuvers that only increased their losses. Eventually, the Empire's remaining ships were forced to retreat. Their fleet, once massive and imposing, was now a shadow of its former self. Many ships were destroyed, others abandoned or disabled, and the morale of the surviving soldiers was shattered. The Terrans had inflicted losses that went beyond material destruction. They had shattered the invaders' belief in their own supremacy. The Empire, humiliated and weakened, was forced to withdraw completely from Terran space, nursing both physical and psychological wounds. The Terrans had not only defended their home, but had also demonstrated the consequences of arrogance and underestimating their opponents. The victory had far-reaching effects on Terran society. Civilians celebrated the courage and ingenuity of their defenders, recognizing that every individual's contribution, from pilots to engineers to command analysts, had been vital. The people gained a profound sense of unity and pride, knowing that their civilization had successfully resisted one of the most powerful forces in the galaxy. The leaders of Terra also understood that the conflict had proven the effectiveness of intelligence, preparation, and coordination over sheer strength, setting a precedent for future defense strategies. The aftermath for the Empire was catastrophic. Their reputation, once feared across countless star systems, was now tarnished. News of their defeat spread through the galaxy, signaling that the Terrans were not to be underestimated. The Empire's leadership faced scrutiny and blame for underestimating a civilization they considered inferior. Officers who had survived the campaign returned to their command centers with tales of unexpected resistance, strategic brilliance, and the devastating effectiveness of the Terran forces. The Empire had paid the ultimate price, not just in ships and resources, but in credibility, authority, and the psychological blow of being bested by a civilization they had assumed would fall easily. For the Terrans, the victory was more than military success. It was a reaffirmation of their values. Courage, intelligence, unity, and adaptability had proven stronger than arrogance, overconfidence, and brute force. The Terrans celebrated, but they also learned valuable lessons from the conflict. They understood that vigilance, preparation, and strategic foresight would always be necessary. As other forces in the galaxy might attempt to test their defenses in the future, the victory strengthened their resolve to protect their home system and prepared them for any challenge that might arise. The final moments of the conflict were symbolic as well. The Empire's retreat left Terran space unthreatened for the first time in years, a testament to the resilience and skill of the defenders. Ships repaired and reorganized, supply lines restored, and command structures reinforced. Citizens and soldiers alike recognized that the defense of their home had been a collective effort, a demonstration that unity and planning could triumph over overwhelming odds. The Terrans' example would serve as inspiration for generations, showing that even the most powerful invaders could be defeated when strategy, courage, and intelligence were applied with precision. The Empire had learned a harsh lesson. Invading Terran space was not a simple task, and underestimating its defenders came with a steep cost. The Terrans, victorious and strengthened, now held a clear advantage, both strategically and psychologically. They had turned their home system into a fortress, demonstrating that preparation, Clever tactics and unity could overcome even the most formidable opponents. The story concluded with a lasting sense of triumph and empowerment, highlighting that the greatest victories are often achieved not through sheer strength, but through intelligence, courage, and determination. Terran society emerged from the conflict stronger and more unified than ever. The defenders had proven that, even against overwhelming odds, the combination of careful planning, coordination, and unwavering resolve could achieve what seemed impossible. The Empire, humiliated and weakened, was forced to reconsider its assumptions and its strategy, understanding that Terran space was not to be violated without paying the ultimate price. The galaxy had witnessed the rise of a civilization that could not be taken lightly, and the legacy of this victory would echo for generations to come.